Peace be upon you. Yusuf checking in again. I just want to start off by kind of aligning the daily rhythm with what truly matters. We have the higher objectives, also known as maqasid in Arabic. We got the 7 modules with the 7 higher objectives here. Go onto the dashboard and see what time of the day it is. Okay, so I already prayed the Asr. And so then after that, we get into returning to the family, what that entails, ensure your spouse needs different tasks, click on one, different subtasks, sources, the whys, the hows, Quranic sources, as well as hadith. In this case, there are no hadith that have been identified for that particular subtask. I think there's hadith for this one though. Yeah. Someone who's best of his wife, and I am best of you to my wives. Again, so Bayana. Again, however, I'm no longer married, so I'm going to return to work. Nor am I living with family at the moment. So, work, Moonshines Collective. Let's dive in. Okay. Not this. Here. Okay. So, in my experience, I've learned many different methods of farming, as well as organizations of communities. I visited a few eco-villages and spent, I think, like 6 weeks at one in British Columbia. And while the original plan was to only attend their 2-hour tour, however, this was by the will of God. I ended up not leaving for 6 weeks. It was an incredible experience and learned a lot. And one of the things that stuck with me is the impact of not having a plan. Because what I'm realizing is that reality often reflects what I'm projecting or what I have going on inside myself. And so I didn't have a plan, and so God showed me what life looks like without a plan and proper due diligence, right? Just rushing into things and then seeing it in real time fall apart. So permaculture has helped in providing a framework as to how to come up with a plan that is based on land. I've currently broken it down into 3 stages, which is observation, planning, and then implementation. What I'm showing you guys here is the user interfaces that I've developed concepts for in order to develop an operating system similar to that life operating system I was just showing you guys. Was it this video or another? Might be aware of it, but again, maqasid, higher objectives of Islamic life operating system, Milos, and the different tasks that come with it. Again, so doing something similar, but for a land-based project, and specifically an intentional Muslim community, but done so in a way that is feasible and organized, because we all have hopes and dreams of the same thing. However, if we're not organized, it will not survive without chaos. So you can see here, we identify the solar and the climate, sun paths and whatnot, topology, in depth, like we're talking, and hydrology. Where's hydrology? Yeah, next one here. What's naturally occurring, ecology, again, in great detail, right? Leaving no stone unturned, because then when you make a plan, you're basing it off of true due diligence and you're not finding out things by surprise. Again, right? Concept of the different zones or patterns. Is this pattern? Zones, yeah. Okay. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Then once you have all those details laid out, then you can get into digging deeper and get into the design aspect of things, right? So design grows from patterns here. Again, this is the dashboard element, the home page. You can really detail the plan and the beauty of organizing it in this way, like the way I was taught permaculture was through a series of slides on a deck, and in order to come up with the design, you would generate the layout and the assets in a previous slide, which would then get copied over to another slide, and then if you were to update the previous slide, which will impact the slide that came after, it became extremely like tedious and not feasible whatsoever on any like stretch of the imagination. So it motivated me to develop this particular system so that when, let's say, you complete the plan and you actually implement it, and then there's a new observation that's made, then you can record that either in the implementation stage or even back to the observation one, and it will update the values as well as recommend basically changes to the operation, and do so in a way that is manageable, because there are so many different elements of this project and it's not feasible for any even group of individuals to keep all of this just in one's head or even on like paper and whatnot. Like this is when we have tools like computers and whatnot available to us, I feel like permaculture and agriculture in general has been neglected, at least from the holistic way of doing things. Obviously, there are tractors and automated systems to manage like the monoculture type of farming. However, very little has been done, at least as far as I'm aware, to make or like for tools like this to be accessible to people that want to do things in a more holistic manner. Yes, there are tables and companion planting like software that kind of help guide the user to understand like what to grow and what to grow with it and what to avoid planting next to it. But this is such a limited like scope. This is only like one aspect that, I mean, works well for what it is, but it's again so limited and doesn't take into consideration the different zones, the different like fungal to bacteria ratios of soil that is optimal for the different types of plants that you want to grow. So for example, for trees, they favor a higher fungal to bacterial ratio, whereas vegetables and smaller plants prefer the higher bacteria, like a lower fungal to bacterial ratio. Don't get me started on pH, because this is dynamic and measuring it is not necessarily all that important, or to manage it you personally is just another indicator of like soil health, for example. So from the perspective, is a way to kind of like trigger an alert in case the pH range or like the pH goes like out of range. Then it's a signal that there's not so much something wrong with the pH, but there's a cause for the pH to go out of the target range. So it's merely a symptom of a problem, not the problem in and of itself. Again, like we talk about like waste to resources, like yeah, we talk about recycling and composting, but in this environment that I'm living in now, you kind of just throw it in the bin, and then you don't know what actually happens afterwards and how it's actually being used. Whereas we can see here, for example, one thing I'm really excited for is the biogas digester. So you can actually not worry about trucking fuel from any other part of the country. You can literally produce your own using what would have actually been just waste. So in this sort of system, there is no such thing as waste. This is merely just an input for another output. And when you keep track of things, then you can optimize. If you don't keep track, then you're just flying blind. More details about solar and climate and topology. Decision-making opportunities based on what priorities are, and a way to organize the operation, keeping track of things. Again, this is still within the planning stage. The 12 principles of permaculture according to Holmgren. Right? Different ways of visualizing it. Again, confidence levels, seasonal tasks. This was an interesting one too for me. You understand like how much exactly labor by season, all the good stuff. So now you can actually plan ahead. It's not like you get into farming and say like, oh, I didn't foresee this, or I didn't account for this, and now I'm gonna have to either sacrifice my sleep, my health, time with my children, or my family, or my wife. Right? Like you plan ahead for things that obviously can be foreseen, and then you won't have to sacrifice what is truly important and irreplaceable. Again, another way of scheduling and understanding like how to implement different features as you're developing, because now we're looking into the implementation stage. Here, homepage, it looks like this, just simplified overview of what to expect, greater details on a summary, and then you can dive even deeper. Because again, looking at the components individually and then seeing like all of that together is what I have right now in this format. Like look at this. Like what? Who's gonna? And this is the tip of the iceberg. Look, you keep going through, and municipal, grid power, environmental risk, energy intelligence, geology, solar, wind, and fire break, all in just like text. Some bars that help. Again, like just information organized in ways that are only like suitable for highly specialized people. This is a bit more like tangible to understand. Here you can see even the confidence level in which the scores have been presented, because all of these details have been supplied through APIs and other sources of data, and then I have programmed the system to produce calculations in ways that actually yield numbers and information that is more like useful in the applicable sense, in the application sense. So for example, like agricultural suitability, like again, not sure like why pH is not, perhaps because it doesn't actually have any data supporting it, and it's high confidence because it doesn't have, oh actually no, that's wrong. Something to look into. So this is still fairly early on, but again, just to give you an idea of what kind of variables are contributing to this overall suitability score. And then we'll get into the type of plants you can have, as I mentioned earlier about companion planting, like what's good to plant with and what to avoid. This one doesn't have. Okay. When we show vegetables, though, you can see avoid peas and beans, but pairs well with tomatoes, pepper, cabbage, rose, strawberry, and beets. This is chive garlic. Temperature is good. Precipitation, so it doesn't need more water than what comes through rain. However, if we go down the list, we can see, and this is based on like a global database of information and not like localized seeds that perhaps are acclimated. Because, for example, celery, and there's some varieties now that do better. Garlic, I know, I can envision like 5 people in my mind right now and can name a few right off the top of my head that are growing garlic and have really good success with this. So this temperature thing and this score should actually be like even 100 if we are if we're using seeds that have been produced by plants that have already acclimated to the temperatures that we have here, especially when you plant them at the right time. Say you plant them in, was it September or August? You plant the bulbs the year before and then you harvest in the next. You can also look at fruits and nuts. Again, a list of the top 100. Fig apparently is good for where we are here. This part of Oakville that, I mean, it's been developed now, so it's not like it was ever an opportunity, but you can see some of the data. Conservation, 60 Mile Creek is not too far. I think this might be it right here. I might be wrong. I think I'm wrong. Yeah, where'd it go? Yeah, here we are. Perhaps it's just a branch, not even. Somehow connected? I'm not sure. But yeah, lots of details organized in a way that is not really feasible now. I mean, with the exception of the economics page, like this is the most presentable thing that we have so far out of this whole system. Details still need to be optimized. Again, it's a lot of details, right? Timeline and phasing, again. So many different ways to present information. I know I'm skimming through this very quickly. Just to give, because I was just experimenting with different ideas and different ways of presenting information. However, I'm truly liking this one better because again, this is much more feasible. You can see basically everything in a manner of like boxes. And for me, like someone who thinks the way that I do, like non-linearly, I'm just like all at once and connecting like different ideas at the same time. Having things in like compartments allows me to like focus on perhaps, let's say we're looking at budget actuals, then I can say, okay, well, I'm here right now, and even if we're zoomed out and all of this is still like visible, I can say like, okay, well, within this box, this is what I need to focus on. Or let's say we're talking about timelines, I can look at here and see that this is actually what needs to be focused on. But when we have, at least for me, what has been an issue is that when I look at details, like there's boxes in here too, but when we go back to site intelligence, where are we here? No. Where's... Okay, yeah, this is the best example of what I'm describing now. So yes, even though it's like small letters, no pictures, and there's so much information packed on one page with no clear like guidance as to like what is actually one needs to know. Even though yes, we have understand the land, identify constraints, design the system, it's just like, okay, well, and then what? This information feeds into different aspects. Like this was another way I was thinking of exploring organizing the information, but again, it's not as nice as seeing information like this, because we're human, right? Like we like seeing beautiful things laid out in beautiful ways, colors and whatnot. And so, right, we can go at a glance. What is the schedule here? Yeah, like maintenance schedule, and then you can see basically what to expect, the day by day tasks based on who is assigned to what, especially when it comes to livestock. That was actually the first thing that I developed the concept for in terms of like operation management. Is the nursery stuff, succession, okay, harvest log, plants mainly, yeah. Again, we can get into, let me see if we can find the, yeah, this. So when finding a property, also the site intelligence is what applied to this here. You can see it kind of here. Like, pictures aren't loading. You can diagnose the property, look at the different zones, wind direction. Take off sectors and put in zones. You can see where your home is. You can have your daily, weekly zone. Then your main crops, and the forage, and then the wild. But yeah, back on track with showing you the guys. Not this one. Yeah, so when you choose a property, this kind of gives you, this is like the automated population of information based on the address you put in, as well as the property boundary, and gives you an idea whether it's worth exploring further based on the initial findings. In terms of operation, this gives you like a site map of where everything is, but this is part of the design stage and not the implementation. Implementation is here, the operations hub. So now we can see, okay, today on the land there's 2 moves that are due. We've got a holding pen that we need to pay attention to, pasture recovery, planting, harvesting, maintenance tasks, and then team assignments as well. So you can kind of organize everything and everyone from one system, so you're not spreading yourself thin, right? And see exactly where on the map people need to be, and then you can optimize even the routes. So for example, let's say you have maintenance here, something to do with water, and then you need to move the cows over to the next paddock. You wouldn't start here and then go here. You would start your day off over here, assuming that there's no restrictions on, or like no particular schedule that you want to follow in terms of moving the animals. Then you can start basically on one end of the map and then make your way over to the livestock, so they take care of this, some infrastructure work, check on the well, and then move on to the animals after crossing the river and into their new paddock. As an example, right? Route optimization. Leave that for now. Again. So now, yeah, this is about 25 minutes of running through what I've got going on with regards to Moontrans Collective and the planning and development. Again, like having the systems in place before hitting the ground, because without a plan, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Because these are things that are known. You don't need to learn the hard way. And I think it'll pay off, like, to take even like this year away from me actively farming to focus on developing this system, although I do miss it and the eggs that the chickens produced. However, this is my understanding is if I don't plan, it's not going to be feasible. I'm going to be struggling to not just find the land, but also to remain on it feasibly from an economical point of view, from time spent, all sorts of stuff, different variables. Yeah. So that's the system at a glance. I'm currently working on actually bringing it to life. I mean, there are some pages that have been developed, like so. It's a little rough around the edges on some parts. And again, they're still using like images and layouts that are not truly optimized just yet. And even this sidebar here as well is not correct. The top part here, yeah, better. However, still a fair bit of work to do. Information is loading here. Hydrology. Definitely an abundance of information, but presented in a way that is not tangible. Right? Like, it's too much. Information overload. So, that being said, yeah, even this is missing. Like, this sucks compared to a store. So please and thank God that I didn't stop at this or this. Right? There's a fair amount of work to do, and I am working on it. Shall take time. And that's usually what good things are about. They take time. That being said, peace be upon you all. Until next time.